Well, more roster crunches are happening at the St. Louis Cardinals as spring training winds down. Now there's talk of a potential 6-man rotation happening in the camp. We'll give our thoughts about that, what it could look like if we think they'll actually move in that direction. Sonny Gray, not a great showing on Sunday. Once again, might even set an MLB record in that showing, and not in a good way. We'll talk about our concern level of Sonny Gray, and especially the home run ball, as well as maybe some more Victor Scott talk today. Another home run center field competition seems to be heating up. There's a lot of decisions the Cardinals have to make over this next week. We'll break it all down on this episode of Deal on the Cards. Welcome back into Deal on the Cards. I'm Josh, joined by Andrew and Sandy as always. Guys, let's start with the news of the day, and then we can move into Sonny Gray stuff, because this is like just kind of out. It felt a little out of left field. I mean, going into spring training, there was some talk that maybe they could consider the idea of a 6-man rotation. And then today, Lynn Worthy of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch asked Ollie about that idea. Like, is that something they're still weighing and considering? And Ollie made it sound like that hopefully by the end of today, they're going to have some answers on that. So by the time you're listening, if not even during this episode, they may already have a decision on that. And so we'll give kind of our thoughts on that. But yeah, so you guys saw the news today that Ollie saying they're going to consider 6-man rotation. There is conflicting reports about who that includes and what that would look like. There's someone who said that it might be Michael McGreevy, and he would start sometimes and be in the bullpen sometimes. Katie Wu said that she thinks it might be referring to Matthew Liberatore as that 6th man. We do know the 5 clearly would be Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Andre Palante, Miles Michaelis, and Steven Matz. So it's really more of a question of whether McGreevy or Liberatore or that 6th guy. And is it a true 6-man rotation, or is it like this 6-man starts sometimes, but he's available in the bullpen other times, kind of like they've done Liberatore at times during seasons? Sandy, this just 6-man rotation thing being floated out there. Thoughts on that as a potential solution to get one of these young guys into the rotation, and what it could do for the Cardinals early on in this year and for the development of some of those guys?
Yeah, I think there are multiple issues with going with the 6-man rotation. I'm definitely not super high on the idea. I put this out on Twitter today, and I didn't even include all my thoughts because the character limit's pretty limiting there. But I think there are a lot of issues. Number one, it's going to take away a bullpen spot. Now, the Cardinals are going to have like hybrid types, right? So assuming the 6-man rotation includes McGreevy or Matz, probably both of them, both those guys can theoretically slot into the bullpen. So maybe this isn't the biggest deal. But again, if you've got these guys on a rotation where they're pitching every 6th day, it might be difficult to get them in the bullpen on short rest. Like, you just kind of don't know how that's going to work. I would assume you're going to be limited there more than usual. I also think there's inconsistency for McGreevy and or Liberatore if he's included in this. We've seen how it's affected Liberatore to be, jerked around. He's called up, he's sent down, he's a starter, he's a reliever. He doesn't get the offseason to stretch out. The Cardinals have shown us time and again that they really do just screw stuff up when they refuse to give starting pitchers the consistency they need to develop. And other teams seem to be willing to ride it out with guys much more than the Cardinals are. This is a great season for them to do this. We've talked about this at length. I would really like to see them just ride it out with these guys, figure it out. If you want McGreevy to be a starter, tell him he's going to be a starter. Let him start. If you want him to be a reliever, I don't really see why. I don't think he has a ton of bullpen upside. Then make him a reliever. The same has gone for Zach Thompson, for Liberatore, for Graceffo. And I think that's hurt these guys in the long run. It's hurt their development. So I want to see consistency, and this does not bode well on that front. Also, I think you're watering down potential gains in the rotation. By that, I mean, if you split this up into a 6-man rotation, now you've got guys making, at the very most, assuming everyone stays healthy and they run this all season, you've got roughly 27 starts per guy. Now that probably won't happen. They probably won't stick with it all year. Someone's going to get hurt. But if they stick to the 6-man form, like, you're limiting how many starts you get from Sonny Gray, right? At the front of the rotation, he could potentially make 33 starts in a fully healthy season in a 5-man rotation. But now you're talking about him only getting 26.
Yeah.
And you're pulling those starts away from more talented pitchers and giving them to a less talented pitcher like Miles Michaelis or Steven Matz potentially. And I just hate to see Palante get 5 less opportunities, Gray 5 less, McGreevy 5 less, Fetty 5 less. Like, those are your best 4 starters. You want those guys on the mound more often. And the last thing is, I've seen teams kick around the idea of a 6-man rotation. It seems like the Cardinals talk about it every few years. It seems like every year there's some team that's like, oh man, we're kind of interested in this. And I've really never seen it happen at the big league level. I haven't seen anybody really commit to it and stick to it for more than a week or two into the regular season. So I kind of doubt it's going to happen. And I think there's probably a reason for that. I think teams know that a 5-man rotation and an 8-man bullpen is probably the optimal way to structure your pitching staff. So until someone proves to me that this is legitimately a real possibility, I wouldn't put too much stock into it.
Well, I think that the Dodgers are doing it this year, but then I think the Mets did it last year with Kodai Senga. I could be wrong.
The Dodgers makes a little more sense because Ohtani gives you the flexibility to run a 6-man rotation, and you're not like killing yourself with a bench spot there. And while the Mets like sort of did it, I don't know. I couldn't see the Cardinals doing it. I don't see it being super likely.
I just don't. I would be shocked if it lasted long because I think
not more than a month, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's not even like because they're like, oh, in a month we'll just end it. I think it's like, well, by that point you're either going to have someone that needs DFA because they're so bad or needs sent down, where it's like maybe Liberatore looks awful and they move into the bullpen. It's like that didn't work out, or they send in Memphis to work on some things, or Michaelis is so bad they DFA him, or injuries happen. Like that's where like I get the point of like, oh, I don't want Gray to have 4 or 5 less starts over the course of an entire season. I just don't. I think you would maybe lose 1 or 2 starts from him actually in practice.
That's fine.
Or the flip side is that they create 6 spots because the season goes poorly and they find a way to get Quinn Matthews in there too, and Roby in there, and other arms in there. I don't think it would happen for more than a couple weeks to a month until basically it figures itself out. I think this is their solution of, clearly sending this guy to AAA is not the best option, but we don't have a rotation spot, so we're going to create one until it solves itself.
I'd be fine with that. Like if they could use this to get 3 young starters an opportunity, right? Like if the 6-man meant that you could get McGreevy, Libby, and Palante into the rotation, like I'd be all for it, Or if the 6-man rotation meant that when Quinn Matthews is ready to come up, he just joins the 5 guys that are already pitching here, I'd be fine with that. I actually would really like that because it would give him and Palante and McGreevy and these younger guys more time in between starts to recuperate. That could even be really interesting if you're talking about like a Takeo Roby or a Tink Hence who've had like workload issues in the past, maybe like, getting them kind of a soft launch this year. I'd be really interested in that. It just doesn't seem like the Cardinals are going to use it that way.
Yeah, we'll see. I guess, and then also the side piece of this, and Andrew, I want you to comment on it. Like, I don't see McGreevy. The comment from Denton about McGreevy being the bullpen doesn't make sense to me.
No sense.
Because no one's said anything to say that yet. So I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying we haven't heard it confirmed by the team yet. And then also Ollie just said recently, and I think I'm pretty sure it's Ollie, might have been Mo, and they both might have commented on this, that they don't want to use McGreevy in the bullpen, that they want him to start in St. Louis or start in Memphis. But they've actively said about Liberatore, we're okay with him being the bullpen and the rotation. So it doesn't make sense to me that I don't see why they would do a 6-man group and potentially have McGreevy in the bullpen some, because it kind of defeats the purpose of what they said, unless they view it as enough of a hybrid that it's not exactly putting in the bullpen, which, okay, maybe they are crazy enough to say that. So maybe I am underplaying that potential, but no one else has said it so far, so it doesn't really make sense to me, so I'm not going to go with that. But Andrew, what do you think about the whole even just the concept of a 6-man? And obviously there's different variations of it, so is there variations that you're like, okay, that makes sense, I'm cool rolling with that for April, and variations of it you're like, that's so dumb, don't do that?
Yeah, I think it's fine to roll with for now. The things will happen with the pitching staff, and eventually we might get to a point where we're frustrated with how it's working out. I don't know. Miles Michaelis hasn't looked terrible this spring. Like, I don't really want to see him get more opportunities. I would much rather they trade Fetty or Mats, or move Mats to the bullpen, and keep Miles Michaelis in the rotation for a little bit. And obviously, if it doesn't work out, I'm not going to be attached to him. He has 1 year left, and he hasn't been good. So if you roll with him for a little bit after you moved on from one of those other starting pitchers with more value, that makes the most sense to me. But they're not going to do that. So if you're going to give everybody opportunities, a 6-man rotation seems like the best option for now. I would like to see Steven Matz be moved to the bullpen, and then giving Liberatore and McGreevy chances to start, mostly because you're going to need that length from one of your bullpen arms. And I don't think Steven Matz really is going to give you the length in the rotation to lose that extra bullpen spot, right? So you need one of your bullpen arms at least to be a long man. And I think using Matz in that spot makes the most sense because he has been stretched out as a starter and he'll probably be able to give you multiple innings. Liberatore also has been stretched out, but we haven't really seen him start this spring. We haven't really seen him get that much run. So personally, it also just makes sense with the giving more opportunities to young guys. If Liberatore doesn't work out, then you can move him back to the bullpen pretty easily. But they're not. I don't think they're going to make this. I don't think they're going to make the most educated decisions all the time, just because historically they have not done that. Kyle Reese put it a little bit more bluntly on Twitter this morning.
Yep.
So yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's a good idea in concept. Will they execute it properly? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, like Michaelis has looked better in spring training, or has looked fine in spring training so far. Again, I don't put much in spring training stats. I know you guys don't put a ton into it either, so I'm not going to be like, oh, Miles Michaelis rebound season coming at you. Steven Matz has also looked pretty good so far, 2.63 ERA in his 13 innings. So it's like he hasn't necessarily bombed to the point that he loses a rotation spot. So that's one of the difficult parts of the two, where it's not like they can't look at the numbers and be like, okay, Steve Matt's getting shelled, so you can't put him in the rotation. But I still agree that I think I would love this scenario if it meant they're putting Liberatore and McGreevy into the rotation and Matz is out of the bullpen, because literally the other day Mosaic was like, hey, we think it's okay for someone like Libby to be in the bullpen and also start some that doesn't restrict him from being in the rotation. Sorry, that also should apply to Steven Matz. We've already seen him go from bullpen to rotation to bullpen to rotation, and he's a veteran who got paid. That dude, he's got to figure it out, right? Whatever role you give him, he's going to have to find himself into that. Maybe they think from an injury perspective that ramping up and ramping down might not be great on his arm, but again, I don't really care. I would much rather see what I have in the young guys in the rotation than make Liberatore do that role again. But I do think if the one scenario I think it would be really dumb is if, two scenarios. One is if they do McGreevy, but they also use him as a lawn man. That's dumb. The second one is if they do this to fit Liberatore in with Matz, because then, at least if you have Liberatore in the bullpen, that's another arm that can give you multiple innings, which I think you need arms like that in your bullpen if you're going to run a 6-man group, because there's going to be some days where it's a 5 and dive and you can't use 4 relievers to get through it because you usually use 4/6 of your bullpen or 4/7 of your bullpen. You only have 3 arms that didn't go that day. But I mean, it could also be a sign that the Memphis shuttle is going to be on hot alert in April, because at this rate you're going to have probably O'Brien and someone else that's on the 40-man right now not make major league roster, because I'm assuming Zach Thompson's going to be put in the 60-day, so that's another arm you could fit a spot for, whether it's Granillo or Anderson or whoever it is that can get that other spot that can go up and down. So I'm not worried about how it impacts the amount of bullpen options they have. I'm just worried about how it affects the development of potential young arms. So long-term, not ideal for the season, but if it's how you start the season, and then, because you can't obviously an injury between now and opening day changes this, right? If Eric Fetty goes down, then it's a 5-man group and McGreevy's in there or Liberatore's in there. But if this is the way to figure it out until one of those guys gets hurt, or one of those guys is clearly not, because right now they're playing, we could say, get rid of one of Michaelis or Matz or Gray. And again, you guys know what I've been at all offseason. I've been just put the young guys in. But from their perspective, it might be okay, you tell us to trade Eric Fetty. We trade Eric Fetty, but now Miles Michaelis is terrible. Steven Matz bombed. And now we don't have, there goes our rotation depth. I'm okay, I see that side of it. And so this allows them to do, as you can hear my dog barking, this allows them to do the side where they can throw an arm in there, and knowing that by the end of April, it's probably going to solve itself. What do you guys think?
Oh, is Sandy frozen?
No, I'm back. I was waiting for you to respond, but I like what you're saying there, Josh. I think the Cardinals are in a really weird spot, unfortunately, because you've got young guys who sort of qualify as depth, but you don't want to use them as depth. And you've got old guys that can't be used as depth. Unfortunately, you can't make Miles Michaelis your depth option. He's either in the starting rotation or he's not on the team. The same goes for Eric Fetty, and the same goes for Sonny Gray, which there's just nothing the Cardinals can do about that. But yeah, I totally see what you're saying, and I agree. that they're definitely in a tough spot where it's like, man, if you give up Eric Fetty and you have two guys that aren't usable all of a sudden, then you'd really be reaching. And it's like, oh, I hope Quinn Matthews is ready. Or like, I hope Sem Bursa can cover these innings. Yeah. And you could get right back to where you were in like 2020 when they're pulling up Johan Oviedo, a guy that clearly is not ready to cover big league innings. And he's just getting shelled every time in the third or fourth inning. So I guess I see where you're at. And like, I understand the Cardinals like wanting to brace and kind of prepare themselves for the worst. It's really hard because last year there just weren't injuries to this pitching staff. Like they were healthy all the way through. Exactly. So we shouldn't just like think about how that went and be used to that because most teams don't operate that way. Obviously, like you see the Yankees have already lost Garrett Cole for the season, you know? So I don't know. It puts them in a really weird spot. But still, as fans, it's like, we still want to see these young guys get opportunities. And honestly, I'm to the point where like my frustration with the team and their inability to find out what they have in young players makes me think I'd almost rather see Sem Bursa or Tekoa Roby covering innings, maybe if they're not ready, over some of these other guys. The other thing is Steven Matz absolutely can be used as depth because he has bullpen upside and he can be pulled from the bullpen to the rotation. So at the very minimum, he should be in the bullpen and you should be thinking about how to work that. And honestly, I don't know if Fetty has that opportunity, but like he was a reliever at some point in his career. It's maybe possible, but it's probably not worth messing with his value. And you know he's going to be tradable at the deadline. And
he's probably your second best starter. So it'd be weird to pull that
I know
rug out. So
I mean, if you had to, you probably could. He'd make more sense than Michaelis for the bullpen. Like Michaelis has no bullpen upside.
Yeah, but at that point, if you're getting to the point where you're like, oh, maybe we just move Fetty, like that would you DFA Michaelis or you do it to Michaelis. Like I don't even care what his value is. It's like I'd rather have bad value for Michaelis to the bullpen than put Eric Fetty in there. So no way.
Yeah, you don't want to lose his starts, and you could get so much back for a Fetty at the deadline potentially. So
potentially, yeah.
Let's hope
so. Yeah, I definitely don't want to put Fetty in the bullpen. Let's not do that. But let's talk about a couple of responses real quick, and then we can talk about a pitcher we are maybe concerned about because that also could influence this mix for sure. But we're presented by the Deal and Cards podcast is presented by 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're located at 9640 All Boulevard and All of that. Open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday and 10 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. You could buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards at the newest selections of packs, boxes, and single players of local players and stars from around the league, like a signed Michael McGreevy card or a John King card or whoever you want. Oh, Shohei Ohtani. They also have other kinds of sports memorabilia in there as well. That's super fun. We know many of you already check out 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles, but we encourage you to go check them out again if you haven't been in a while or haven't gone at all. They've got a great selection there, and they're awesome to work with. So thank you, 314, for sponsoring the Deal in the Cards podcast. And we also want to tell you about one of our presenting sponsors as well. The Deal in the Cards podcast is proud to be partnered with Underdog Sports, our favorite place to play fantasy games. You're now eligible to play in Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, and 37 other U.S. states. You got to check out Pick'em. It's so easy to play. You just pick 2 to 8 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. You can win 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. If that sounds like fun, sign up with our promo code CARDS to claim your first free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We can't wait to see your entries. You know, if there's a higher or lower for Sonny Gray home run ball in a game, you should probably pick the higher right now, guys. Last year, Sonny Gray gave up a lot of home runs, I think like 20-something home runs. He almost gave up he gave up double the amount of home runs in 4 games he pitched last year than he did all of 2023, which is pretty bad. Again, there's some weird stuff with that. I see sometimes people say Sonny Gray's always had a home run issue and he just had 1 year he didn't. It's not true. He's in the top third in all of baseball since he debuted in like home run rate. So that's just not true. But clearly it was an issue last year and it's been an issue in camp. And I know we'll again say that it's just spring training. There, he's going out there. He's actively saying, "I'm working on my feel." Like that one, the first game when he gave up multiple home runs, like he talked about the very first pitch of the game he threw, he was just getting a feel for the fastball. He would never throw that in a game. So, are you guys concerned at all about Sonny Gray right now?
Well, I think the home run problem last year was overstated to some extent. Like it was still like he still allowed less homers per 9 than Showtime Imanaga. So, like, let's talk about that for a second for all the people that were glazing him. Yeah, it's probably somewhat of an issue. I think there was this expectation that Gray would be able to like maintain his home run rate because even if things got slightly worse, Like he wasn't maybe going to be the best in all of baseball, but he was moving to a really pitcher friendly park in St. Louis. And so people didn't expect it to like nearly triple, but it's tripling from the lowest rate in baseball. So it's not like 1.1 homers per 9 was like a huge issue, but in camp, it looks kind of bad. I can't lie to you, especially in spring when it feels like it's pretty tough to find guys hitting for power most of the time. So maybe that portends to something about the future, but it's also possible that he's just working on stuff and he's missing over the middle because he's refining something. I'm trying not to put too much stock in it. But that's where I'm at with this as the Sonny Gray truther.
I think we should just be banned from watching spring training games. Like, I'm glad
yes.
today. I don't even think they should have a game feed on. No StatCast, just like the Washington Park.
Just let me look at the box score for like 2 minutes afterwards.
No box score. None of that.
Oh, come on. Let me look at the box score. That's kind of nice.
Like,
that's even worse because then you can't put any context to it.
Yeah.
You're just like, that dude gave up 3 runs. Like you probably put up Sonny Gray, 8 earned runs, but then like, which again, they deservedly, but like also at the same time, like relievers came in and gave up the runs and innings and Gray got out of it, maybe, but
yeah. I like to look at box scores to be like, oh, that guy got a hit today. I'm never looking at it for our pitching. I don't care. Unless Nick Anderson gives up 4 runs in an inning. Then like,
well, I mean, there's guys that are in camp to prove something, and there's guys that are in camp just to work on things, right? Like, I don't know. Nolan Arenado is hitting 150, but Victor Scott has like a 1150 OPS. Like, honestly, if that translates into the regular season, I'll take it, right? Because Arenado, you can just like not really part of your future, but like these numbers don't really mean much. Scott's trying to make the roster. Arenado's trying to work on his swing and get ready for the season. And I think Aaron Judge is hitting like 140 right now, and we're not really worried about that. I think Kyle Tucker has 1 hit all spring, right? So there's these guys that just are bad in spring training, and that's totally fine. And you know, I hope Kyle Tucker gets 1 hit all year. That would be great. But I don't think that's going to happen, right? He probably get a hit tomorrow. So like he said he wasn't worried about things like that. And if the Cubs, honestly, I don't even know if Kyle Tucker's really bad and the Cubs just like extend him, that could be really, really bad for the rest of it. But
even to your point, like you brought Victor Scott again. It's like I just watched. He got a hit off Kodai Senga the other day to lead off, or was it the lead off? Anyways, he got it in that game. But like, you look and Senga basically threw a fastball down the middle, and Victor Scott hit into the outfield. And it was one of the critiques of the people who watched the games last year, because people were like, "How could you not have Victor Scott on the opening day roster? He's producing at this high level." And it's like, well, you look at him and he keeps taking advantage of these pitches that you're not going to get in a major league game. And so he's putting up okay stats. His OPS is bad, but his average is good. Then gets to the regular season and puts up a negative WRC plus. I have never seen that in like more than a 3-game sample size. What was that?
He brought it back up.
But before when he got sent down, it was negative 25. So the whole month of April, it was terrible. And so it's like, oh, so where are all the people who were like, Cardinals, you're an idiot for sending him down before the Dylan Carlson injury happened? Like, none of them wanted to speak up at that point. So that's where it's just like, it's hard for me to say, is Victor Scott's stuff this camp real? It looks better. It looks different. So I will give it that. And he could be ready, but I'm not gonna be like, oh, this dude's 1,000 OPS, so he for sure is like ready to hit today. Like you also have to see who's on the mound. Like, I'm glad he got the hit off Kodai Senga, but like, when you've got a guy who's getting hits off AA pitchers up there, it's like, okay, so does that show you he's MLB ready? Like, I don't know what to do with that. So I know we're talking about Sonny Gray now. We're talking about a Victor Scott conversation, but I for one am not concerned about Sonny Gray. I'm concerned that it could be rocky to start the year, and maybe he's like, I'm a little concerned that we're a week and a half from opening day and he's still figuring things out. And if you watch the game, he got sent back out there like 3 or 4 times, and he just didn't look comfortable, especially his last time he got thrown out there. Like, the fastball, it was like he could not command it. It's like, dude, what's going on here? But I trust that like when Sonny Gray tells me he's working on things and that he'll get it figured out, I trust that more than when Miles Michaelis says it, right? Because you've heard this song and dance from Michaelis before. He's like, oh, I just gave up a bunch of soft contact today and dinked and dunked, and I feel really good. It's like, no, you got killed today. And guess what? You're probably going to the next time you're out there too. Sonny Gray, I trust the talent there. Maybe I predicted that he'd be like a top 5 Cy Young guy this year, or top 10. I think Cy Young votes. Maybe that's not going to happen, but I don't think he's going to be like some washed 4 ERA guy this year. So
Yeah, I mean, if Sonny Gray puts up a 4 ERA, it'll be because he had like a few bad starts that tanked his season stats. It won't be because he's going out there every time and looking like just meh at the very best. The other thing is too, like, I think I'd be uncomfortable going back out there the fourth time. Like in spring training,
True.
it's kind of a rules quirk, like for people that don't know. Like you can pull a pitcher and then put them back into the game. And that happens a lot when pitchers are, working on something and maybe the manager says, all right, you're on a pitch count per inning today. So it's like, you're not going to be out there for more than 20 pitches. And so it's like, that's probably what happened with Sonny Gray, where he faced the first 4 batters in the first inning, or he clean first inning, like 3 up, 3 down or something. Maybe he gave up a hit and like got a double play or something like that, I think. And then faced the first 4 in the second inning, had 2 outs, 2 on, and they pulled him. And Jose Cuenca came in and immediately gave up an RBI double off the wall, which was like, whatever. And then, he gave up a couple more runs. They put Sonny Gray back into the game. He, again, faces the first 4 batters, gets 2 outs, but lets 2 on. They pull him again. So it's like, if you're kind of getting jerked around a little bit like that, you're in the game, you're out of the game, it probably feels pretty strange. And it's probably frustrating. Like, I'd be kind of pissed if my manager was coming out and messing with me in the second inning. And it's like, this is a normal situation. 2 on, 2 out in the second inning is a very normal situation. That's not something to be freaking out about. And if they're putting you back in for the 4th time in front of people too, it's probably a little like frustrating as a starter who doesn't normally get taken out of the game more than once every 5 days. It's like, it'd be kind of weird. So I kind of get that it's just a throwaway weird start. But if he looks bad to start the regular season, like you'll have all these people pointing at spring. Be like, well, he didn't have a good spring, so I saw it coming.
And I mean, it could happen. I'm not denying that, but it's also like, I'm not going to like be like, oh, because he was terrible on March 16th that he's going to be terrible this year.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think like that on that. So, oh man. Any other Sonny Gray related thoughts there?
I mean,
I think he should be one pulled from the rotation instead of Miles Michaelis. At this point,
he's got more bullpen upside than Miles Michaelis. That's for sure.
I don't know. Yeah,
Sandy and his bullpen upside.
I was just making the point that from a pure baseball perspective, if you had to have someone in the bullpen, Fetty would be better at it. He'd be better.
I don't know if you could ever make an argument to me where it says from a pure baseball perspective, take out your second best starter and make him a reliever.
I just mean if you had to have somebody, because the Cardinals are not going to DFA Miles.
But even that,
they're just.
But even then, if you had to, I wouldn't put Fetty in there because that's my number 2 starter.
I don't think they would ever put Michaelis in there. Like
I think they would do that before Fetty.
I hope so.
No, I actually like the idea of using Michaelis as a long man and just throwing him in there every time.
That's my idea. That's my long-term idea.
Like have him lead the league in innings and have like a 7 ERA, but he's not going to lose you any games and he's not going to win you any games. So
didn't I say that last year? Every time the Cardinals are down by more than 5 runs, you should just put Miles Michaelis in and he gets to finish the game.
Yeah.
And he could throw like 300 innings and do whatever, but it'd be awesome. And you just know, like, Miles Michaelis is going to be out there. It'd be great because I could turn the TV off and I'd be like, the game's over. And I wouldn't keep watching. It'd be awesome. Like, if I was there, I could leave. I could beat the traffic. I could walk out to my car very comfortably, knowing I'm not missing anything. Like, it'd be great.
Apparently everyone else would follow you, though.
Fine by me. If you're down 5 runs, the game's probably over.
I mean, it's probably like...
If you're on audio, we were told that was the best take by Sandy since Newt News. So what a throwback.
We're almost coming up on a year of not being Newt News.
It's crazy stuff.
It feels longer than that. I guess one other thing before we finish up is obviously I think some people had various feelings about the idea of JC was sent down, Koperniak was sent down. Obviously, Koperniak had a really strong camp, and I would love for him to have made the opening day roster. I just don't really see how it makes sense. Like, the only path in my mind is if you were to send down both Siani and Scott, and then you had Nootbaar in center field and Koperniak was your other center field option. Or there's an injury to Walker or Nootbaar, because where do you play Koperniak? There's not really a spot on the bench. Luke and Baker makes more sense to be on the roster because he's a right-handed bat. You already have a lot of left-handed bats on the roster. Were you guys upset about Koperniak being sent down to AAA and not making the roster, or do you guys kind of understand it from a roster construction standpoint?
It makes sense. I feel like there's not really a world where I don't see Siani on the roster as a defensive replacement of some sort. And like it's unfortunate. I think what they're probably going to end up doing is, I mean, Scott looks really good so far in camp. But I mean, I just want him to be ready. I think they should start with Newt Barnes center and then send Scott to AAA so Burleson doesn't get squeezed. Although Sandy probably wants that to happen.
No.
But if you know, then you know.
No.
I feel like they're going to end up going with Scott in center, and then having some sort of Burleson like platoon at DH or something, and then I mean, yeah, Sandy would probably. I mean, I don't think he can play center as well, but he might be able to hit to a 063 average with no power.
Can we do like a DH for Siani?
Hey, I've got a home run derby.
We let the pitchers hit, and Siani has the DH.
That would make me very happy. But
I just want it to be known. I play a lot of wiffle ball down here in Waco. We got a home run derby tonight, so like, who knows? You know, maybe I could be Siani.
Burley pitches, and that's how he gets in the lineup.
Oh yeah,
I like it.
Two-way player.
I could rock
two-way player.
And then you get to keep another reliever. You can have a 6-man rotation, and then you still have 8 bullpen arms.
Wow, we solved it right there. It's all figured out. It's right. It was right in front of us the entire time. Oh man, this is why you'll never work in a front office. That is one of my favorite Mo quotes. That
was so brutal.
Sandy, any frustration about Koperniak not making the roster?
Well, I think it's a little overblown because people are acting like, did he probably earn a spot in a vacuum? Like, yeah, he had a great camp. He had a really nice year last year, and he probably should be on a major league roster somewhere. Unfortunately, it just isn't going to work out that way to start the season in St. Louis. Doesn't mean he won't get a chance to debut for the Cardinals. It doesn't mean he's not going to be one of the first guys they look at if there's an injury. It doesn't mean he's not a great placeholder. But at the end of the day, like, having Koperniak on the roster isn't going to make this team like a playoff team. And that's why I think some of the stress about it is just wasted. He's a 4th outfielder, and we have to be honest about that. It's like, I've been frustrated that certain guys don't make the roster before. Like, if John King doesn't make the bullpen on opening day, I'm going to be annoyed about it. I'm a John King supporter. I love John King, but I'm also not going to pretend like having John King in the bullpen for those 2 weeks at the beginning of the season was like going to turn the Cardinals into a World Series contender versus not. And so, like, you got to be honest about what his role with the team is. And as a 4th outfielder, it's like, it's not going to be the end of the world if he's not on the roster right away. But I do think he had a great spring, and that shouldn't go overlooked. And I think he's an exciting player with a real future on a big league roster. Whether it's the St. Louis Cardinals or somewhere else, he's going to get his shot eventually. He deserves it.
And also, too, like, again, like, if Gorm is terrible to start the year, then like maybe that changes the dynamic a little bit. Maybe Walker or Newbar gets hurt, and then he gets some runway there. Like, I think most people that are pretty plugged in that like Koperniak think he's a 4th outfielder. Like, not even just like right now, but like long term, he's not one of your top 3 guys. So that's where I'm like, how many people were clamoring for Nolan Gorman to come up when he was having the home run barrage in AAA? Remember in 2022, and he was just couldn't not hit. And then it's like now now everyone's like, Gorman's trash. Get him out of here. How many people want Dylan Carlson and thought he'd be like amazing? And now he's trash.
Oh, he's having a great spring.
I'm saying, like, when he was with the Cardinals, then everyone wanted to get rid of him. Same with Tyler Neal. How many people were like, get him in the lineup every day? And then he wasn't good enough. How many people want Juan Yepes? And it's like, hasn't really done much in the Nationals. How many people wanted, like, I just feels like every year there's like one guy that like pops off as a prospect, and we completely forget that it does not guarantee that they're going to be awesome at the big league level, especially when they're like, I know Koperniak's not the same status of those guys, and actually the Cardinals have better luck with the Donovans and Newbars of the world who don't have the prospect pedigree, and they end up being the guys who are a little bit better. But sometimes I shake my head, people being like, oh, look, Koperniak has 1,000 OPS. Clearly he's one of the best hitters on the team. It's like, you said that about Gorm. You said that about Burleson. You said that about Carlson at one point. You said about O'Neill at one point. You said about Jordan Walker at one point. You said about Mason Wynn at one point. You said at Thomas JC at some point. It's like, when is that going to end? And that's the Cardinals' issue. It's not the fans' issue for wanting them. The Cardinals can't like get these guys to stick, and that's the problem. But I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh well, Koperniak clearly is going to be a beast, and they're just holding him back. I don't know if that's true, But
it'll be so funny though when Koperniak gets traded for like a bag of chips.
It will happen.
Pops off for some team.
It'll probably happen.
Can you imagine like the Astros sustain an injury and they need like a fourth outfielder or something? They go to Koperniak and he has just like a Linsanity stretch for 2 weeks, and Cardinals fans are just screaming, "He's the next Arozarena. He's the next Adolis Garcia."
That happened with Carlson when he got traded.
I know,
He like got a good week or two at the
Yeah.
Rays. I was like, oh, and then he was so bad that they didn't even tender him a contract after the season. So.
Well, it's just like we're guilty of this too. Like we change our opinions rapidly on things. I mean, like you kind of just have to. Like we're reacting to the news. You may hear me talking, being very excited about Sonny Gray one day. He has a bad start. Like I'm going to be upset about it, but at some point too, you gotta watch out for it because like a lot of fans, you're absolutely right, say the same things about the same players, and then they get upset that the front office doesn't have the same reactionary behavior as them. But like they can't do that. They don't have that luxury.
And again, like I'm not saying like changing your opinion on a player. Like you just like if the evidence is clearly there that you're wrong, you should do that. I'm more so like feel free to call me out on it if it happens this year. I'm trying to keep myself in check to be like, I'm not gonna be like Quinn Matthews is clearly a front of the rotation starter right now. Should be in your lineup in rotation because he would be amazing. And it's like, no, I want to see him have opportunity. Which I guess some people are saying that Koperniak, like, oh, I want to see this guy's opportunity. That's fair. But like, let's not act like they're idiots for giving Nolan Gorman a chance for a month. Okay. Like, let's see if he's batting 190 or 210 the whole season and clearly he's not figuring it out and Koperniak's tearing up in AAA, then I'm like, okay, someone's got to change here. But anyways, I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
AAA at bats to me are more worthwhile than like spring training at bats, right? Like
True.
If someone tears it up in AAA for 2.5 months, I'm much more inclined to give that guy a shot than someone who has a nice like stat line in 26 spring training at bats. I don't really care about the spring training ABs.
Yeah. For sure. So we'll see what happens. And again, I think you're right. Like I think Koperniak gets a chance at some point this year. So JC, I think in some capacity will. It's hard with Gorm on the roster right now and Arenado, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, I mean we're got some roster battles to watch out for. I'm guessing the next time we go live, we'll have a little bit more clarity on that. It sounds like this weekend they really want to make some final decisions on that. It really comes down to how center field plays out, and how center field plays out will impact how the bench plays out. Again, the 5th or 6th starter now potentially, and then how the last 2 or 1 spot, the bullpen work out. So It'll be interesting. Any other final thoughts on the way out?
John Denton told me that Lars Nootbaar has upside like Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto. So I look forward to the breakraut this year.
Oh my gosh. Is that real?
Yeah, he did. He wrote that with underlying metrics.
That's a crazy thing to say. I love Lars Nootbaar, but Shohei? That's crazy.
I think he was talking about the blast stat and stuff like that. And also like the 90th percentile chase rate and hard hit percentage. But
Newt's a StatCast darling. I'm ready. Yeah. I'm ready to see it all come together this year.
See, I start swinging more though. So we'll see. Well, appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Again, there'll be more clarity about the roster here soon, and so then we're not speculating anymore like we've done for months. We'll just get to actually see what the Cardinals actually decide to do. Like and subscribe helps channel a ton. We really appreciate you all. We're excited to see the season get rolling, right? I think that's probably been the most frustrating part of this all is like we all just need to see what happens, right? We can all guess all day which of the unbats or pitchers are actually going to do something, but now we need to see it play out. So we're very, very close to that. We'll be with you along the way the whole season. So thanks for tuning in for another episode of Deal in the Cards. We'll see you next time.